In today's episode, I'm here in Vegas with Andrew Webley at Bitcoin 2025. Let's have a look at what's coming up.
And I saw him over to the other side, so I thought, I'll go and say hello. So I went up to him and he knew my company name before I even said it to him.
Wow.
Which was weird.
Obviously, you're not just here for the conference itself, you know, the talks and things like that. One of the reasons is to try and meet potential investors. How's that going?
So I've spent the whole day from about 9:15 this morning, meetings. That's why I was 10 minutes late to see you. And it's going pretty well. Being transparent about it, you know, one or two you think, you know, aren't right, you know, but that doesn't mean to say that they won't be right in the future. I'm pleased with the start that we've made. I've got my own targets, which I've shared before. I believe that we're on track. Nothing's a dead cert in life or in investing. I'll be disappointed if I can't beat the targets that I've set myself. The acceleration that we've got is exactly as illustrated in the charts. The fastest, best, whatever you want to call it. Everyone in the UK holds Bitcoin whether they like it or not.
Of it. Yeah, that's great.
Yeah. And if you do things in the right way, then people support you and they give you a chance. And then that allows you to raise better capital on better terms to then grow the business further.
Andrew, thank you so much for taking the time out of the conference to talk to me today. Firstly, how are you finding Las Vegas, and is it your first time here?
Yeah, so Las Vegas is a crazy place. Hotels are massive. Literally everything is there in the hotel for you, you know, shops, food, you know, cafes. With the Bitcoin conference going on in the hotel, it is right up my street. I'm not sure whether it would be somewhere that I would go without the conference element. So I think with a conference with a subject matter that you absolutely love, it's great. But I'm not sure whether I'll be rushing back for other things. But it's been the best couple of days that I've had for a very long time.
And how was it meeting Michael Saylor?
It was odd, actually. So, I've been investing in strategy for many years. You know, I've listened to so many things that he said. You know, I see everything that he puts out on X. So I went up to him after we did this talk, which was a UTXO private event.
That was on Monday, wasn't it?
Yeah, Monday. And there was about, 300, 400 people in the crowd. You know, some of them I knew already, some of them I didn't know. I sat on the stage with, you know, companies that I look up to. So anyway, with the talk had finished, chatting to a few people and I saw him over to the other side. So I thought, I'll go and say hello. So I went up to him and he knew my company name before I even said it to him.
Wow.
Which was weird.
That's pretty cool though.
Yeah, really cool. Really cool. And if you had said to me 4 weeks ago, you know, I would have told you to stop winding me up, you know. And you know, he's just been so good for the whole sector that it was, you know, genuinely, you know, awesome to meet him.
Brilliant. And, you know, he'd obviously done his homework before meeting you.
Well, so some of my American friends have been saying to me the last couple of weeks, you know, can't wait for you to come over to Vegas. You know, everyone's talking about you and all this sort of stuff. And I believe them because, you know, what they tell me is 99% of the time true. But I also couldn't really believe it. And then, you know, I was sat watching David Bailey chat, you know, the other day or yesterday, I think. You know, he mentions our company, you know, they're genuinely, you know, you can see from what he puts on X and things, but it's a very difficult thing to describe. But you almost don't want to get your hopes up because you believe that you're working really hard and you believe that everyone's getting behind you and you can see the future so clearly. But it's still that strange stage, even though I, you know, can see the volume that goes through the stock, you know, the price action, you know, the people that are asking me for meetings and things, you still think, you know, do they really know about the company? And obviously they all do. But yeah, it's strange but cool.
It's almost like you've got to experience it before it can be real.
Yeah. I can't really describe it other than it's really strange. You know, like, you know, I'm so proud of the company that I set up, and you know, I've worked so hard, you know, for many years on it, and I'm working harder than ever now. And to see all these other people interested in it is, you know, it's awesome.
Yeah, Well, good for you, because you know that's where the hard work gets you, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah. Hopefully, I had dinner last night with two people that invested in the IPO. That so the IPO was part retail, part private. People can see that information if they read all the announcements. And two of them wanted to take me out for a meal, which was nice, and it was just really nice chatting to them. And they were saying, this is life-changing amounts of money, for the future. They haven't sold any shares, and because they believe, like I do, in what we're doing. And it was just amazing, because they're amazing people, and it's nice to see other people that want to support you. Then, providing we carry on the trajectory that I hope we are, sort of do well. Really, that's what it's all about.
Brilliant. So, I mean, obviously, you're not just here for the conference itself. The talks and things like that. One of the reasons is to try and meet potential investors. How's that going?
So I've spent the whole day from about 9:15 this morning meetings. That's why I was 10 minutes late to see you, and it's going pretty well. Being transparent about it. One or two you think aren't right, but that doesn't mean to say that they won't be right in the future. One of them was amazing. There's more meetings later today and tonight, and then tomorrow morning before I leave. So, so far so good.
Fantastic. We, as a community, have we've been coming up with different ways to display metrics and things like that. And Bitcoin B21 Nick has certainly led the charge on that front. His sort of speed of accumulation chart, which compares SWC to its competitors. Well, not competitors. It's
peers.
Peers, that's the word. And it kind of looks quite favourable on SWC side. Firstly, what are your impressions of it? And do you think we can keep ahead of like Metaplanet's pace? Because at the moment we're the fastest growing Bitcoin treasury.
Yeah, so I'm pleased with the start that we've made. I've got my own targets, which I've shared before. I believe that we're on track. Nothing's a dead cert in life or in investing. I'll be disappointed if I can't beat the targets that I've set myself. The acceleration that we've got is, exactly as illustrated in the charts, i.e., the fastest, best, whatever you want to call it. Anyone can look at our cash position and make assumptions from there, which is quite cool, in sort of, what's it, a few days over a month now. It won't take much to get to that target that we all want to see. I like his sort of time to target. The percentage on there will obviously change as time goes on. So yeah, I think we'll get there. I'm not sure what number he'll set it to after 1,000 though. Maybe he'll set it to 2,000, maybe 5,000. Setting it from 1,000 to 5,000 is quite a big jump, you see, but might be more sensible than 2,000. So I guess we get to 1,000 and then we see where we go from there.
Yeah, and maybe we could base it off what your next target is when you decide and go, okay, we've made it to 1,000. I think we go for 5, or actually, let's stick with the 2.
Yeah, I probably lean more towards the 5 than the 2, but let's get to 1,000 and take it from there. Like we just want to keep the pace. Working every day to deliver the mission, and then when we tick these sort of different milestones off, then we'll see where we go from there. Well,
obviously, the share price and the market cap has grown, well, in my opinion, astonishingly quickly. Maybe it's what you expected, I'm not sure. But with it having, in a month's time gone up 40 times, is that right? Yeah.
Approximately.
Roughly. Does that put more impetus on the uplisting, and does it change the timelines at all? Is it kind of it just is this long? It takes this long, or is there room to maneuver in that because of the rapid growth that we've seen?
Yeah, so that's a good question. So what I've been told by our advisors is that to move to a different market, should we choose to do it, would take between 4 and 6 months. It's not a dead cert. There's a process, and a cost to it. I've been thinking about it a lot these last few days, and I think it's something that we'll probably explore. When you get on to the main board, as opposed to Aquis, you get tracker funds, which are probably the most exciting part of that.
So like the passive inflows from the funds.
Yeah, so if you speak to a fund manager that manages money on a discretionary basis, then they choose if they want to invest in you or not. If you get onto the, say, the FTSE 250, the FTSE 100, any of these indexes, then the computer that makes the decision does it based on allocation, so the flows are quite vast, and it's quite funny because, you could find yourself in a position where almost everyone in the UK has got some Bitcoin exposure, because almost everyone's got some allocation to these sorts of trackers. Sure. So obviously that's not the primary driver, but it would be quite cool.
Yeah, I think that would certainly give you a bit of a smile.
Yeah, for sure.
To know
for sure.
These people.
Everyone in the UK holds Bitcoin, whether they like it or not.
Of it. Yeah, that's great.
Yeah,
I like that a lot. So just to clarify though, with regards uplifting, are you thinking, skip AIM?
Oh yeah, we will not list the business on AIM for reasons that aren't really worth sort of going into. AIM is no better, in fact maybe worse than Aquis because it's more expensive. Sure. Liquidity, well, I think we've sort of put the liquidity thing to bed now.
Well, yeah, could you just talk a little bit more about that, because it was viewed as one of the downsides to Aquis.
Yeah, well, I think it just comes down to what the business is. If you're, a business that, is working hard, is communicating with its shareholders, that offers some potential and, all these other things, then, I think it's a refreshing change to what is, not the most interesting market as a whole, i.e. London. I think, well, the facts speak for themselves, don't they? So, today, when I checked earlier, it's quite a volatile day actually, but we traded almost £5 million worth of stock. Previous day, I think we traded over £5 million worth of stock. We're consistently trading more than the rest of the market combined. We're probably trading maybe not quite in the when you had the two markets together, the top 100, but probably in the top 100 to 150. So, I think we've proved that the liquidity side of things doesn't really matter. The market makers like it because there's volume. So when you get volume, the spread decreases, which is really important. So if what people want to buy or if people want to sell, that's quite good. So yeah, I think we've proved that liquidity isn't necessarily reflective of the market.
And reading between the lines there, it sounds like we're bringing excitement back to UK markets.
Yeah, I think so. And that's really important. I get a lot of phone calls and emails from, people who seem to be getting up the visibility side of things. I bumped into a hedge fund manager actually when I was at the conference earlier today. And he was telling me about his boss who runs billions of pounds, that his one of the other managers that he knows was asking him whether he had sort of looked into SWC, and then he asked, the guy that I know who works within that fund about it, who, clearly does. And yeah, it's just nice to see people know about it, and I think if the government's message is that they want innovative companies that are working hard, that are trying to present, the right approach about what we're doing in the UK, I hope that we're playing some small part in that. I've seen messages from people saying, it's great, I don't have to wait for America to open anymore, the stock market's become interesting again.
No FX fees.
Yeah, exactly. And it's also having, it's having a company, that's part of, part of, your country and stuff. So, that's why if you look across the world, people, I think people would prefer to invest in the UK on the whole, but the opportunities haven't been there. You look at like tech companies, which is obviously something that I'm very fond of. I can't even name off the top of my head, a great tech company that's come out of the UK. If you really pushed me on it, I'd probably have to say my former employer, because you could class that as a tech company.
Yeah, sure.
But what happened there? It got sold.
Yeah.
Because the market didn't value it appropriately, and then it got sold to an overseas consortium. So yeah, I would hope that at some point, the sort of the momentum continues. Maybe we get other companies, whether they're doing something similar to us or something different, where people say, oh, actually, there's a different way of doing this. We can sort of not try and do the usual public market thing where they, effectively rip the company off, give themselves loads of free shares and all these things that I can't stand, and if you do things in the right way, then people support you and they give you a chance. And then that allows you to raise better capital on better terms, to then grow the business further. So yeah, it's good.
Yeah, I've certainly enjoyed your ethos of looking after the retail side of things.
Well, if you think about us,
it feels quite refreshing, to be honest.
Yeah, well, look at us. Those 3 raises that we've done since we've listed, not one has been done at a discount. They've been better prices each time. The raise that we did last week was 81% approximately better price, almost double the amount. So it says it all. We've got a really good cash position at the moment, which obviously will be deployed using our treasury management strategies. I read a lot of comments online about, when you're going to do your next raise and things. But, other than saying to people that I'll try and keep it interesting because, I don't really want people trading against the company for the expense of the shareholders. I think that's a bit off. If you know that I'm endeavouring to do things at the market price, why should you lower it to then try and
benefit from
save a couple of pennies? Yeah. It's not right. So luckily with my experience, I can see some of that. Yeah. And I just keep trying to mix it up a little bit, the approaches that we take, and I think everyone will be pleasantly surprised.
Will we be waiting long for the next one?
I couldn't possibly say on that.
Come on.
The only promise that I could probably say is that, we'll keep doing our best. If somebody offered us a load of money, tomorrow, we'd potentially take it. If that doesn't happen, then, we won't. Do we need money in the next week? No. Do we need it in the next month? No. Do we need it in the next year? No. So we'll only take the right capital at the right time. But, clearly we want to, keep our trajectory growing. But it's got to be, absolutely everything's got to be done for the benefit of the shareholders, wherever possible.
Yeah, so there's bigger picture things in other than just growth rate, right?
Yeah. So, why does somebody invest in a company? Well, normally it's so that they can get a share price appreciation, right? And often that doesn't happen. So with our business, with our different pillars that we've got in there, we've got, clear strategies for, what we're doing. That's all been clearly communicated. But, you want the capital that's going to be accretive to the existing shareholders, so, as we move forward from here, there's more options there as well. And, we'll keep doing our best on that.
Fantastic. A little bit again on the sort of community side of things, as that's kind of my focus. Do you think kind of having the community and that sort of retail investor hub of people helps with the institutional side as well, because they can see that you've got the retail support and that people are actually passionate about it and that kind of thing?
Yeah, massively. What institutions want, other than the obvious things like a good business, well run, etc., is they want a liquid stock. So the community is absolutely critical because it adds to the interest and the liquidity, and it allows people to share opinions, some of which, sometimes I might not agree with, but, that's free speech, right? So yeah, it's mega important. And, it's one of the coolest parts of what's happened so far. So yeah, it's really, really important because institutions will not invest in a stock that's got poor liquidity, because they need to understand that should they wish to take some of their money off the table, then they can do that.
They can actually do it,
yeah. So that's the problems why, like a small company that's not very good, that hasn't got any liquidity, if you're going to make an investment in something, what you probably want to do is you want to look at a longer term liquidity. I know we've only got 4 or 5 weeks of previous data, but you can see where the trend is. Yeah. So what you'll see with a lot of companies is that the liquidity might spike sometimes. For example, if they do a discounted placing or sort of a spoofy sort of RNS, and then it will drop right down again. So, the institutions look at liquidity.
Is it consistently?
Yeah. And we've got liquidity. I had a chat actually to some investors earlier today, and I was showing them how the liquidity has changed. And I've got no idea if like the liquidity is almost off the chart already for, a smaller company. I'm really looking forward to what the liquidity looks like in 1 week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks, bearing in mind that we've got the OTC all being well coming on live, in the not too distant future. The liquidity, not that we need any more liquidity, but, the more liquid, the better. So it's going to be really interesting to watch that.
Yeah, fantastic. Speaking of the OTCQB, being out in Vegas, American investors can get access to SWC at the moment, but it's not easy. Has there been much chatter of people you've spoken to, asking about whether they can just buy the shares, or have you sensed the sort of hunger there from the small, more less institutional and more retail side?
I've actually had a lot of UK people come up to me, which is strange, and recognised me, and say that they're a shareholder or say that they're looking to buy some shares. I've had a sort of another UK company that's a competitor, say how great it is what we're doing and stuff. So, I've been told this by UK people. From some of the Americans, the ones that I know reasonably well, they've said, that, this is sort of impeding in their sleep patterns slightly, because they spend a lot of time on the Aquis website. And I've said to them, that's great, but just, remember that shares do go down as well as up, obviously we all hope that the long-term trajectory is up, but that's not something that I control. I control the work that I put in, and then the market reacts accordingly. So we've had some good feedback. I think specifically on US retail investors, yes, people that are determined can buy it now, and everyone can see some of the comments on X and things about that, so they can see that, and that's quite unusual, which shows you that sort of pent up demand. But you wait and see when it's listed on the OTC, so that people can just buy it easily. It'll be quite incredible. And then the other thing that you've got with a company like ours, where you've got an aspect of digital assets, is when the American market closes, which is evening UK time, and then those market makers, any trades, they've got to hold them overnight. When Bitcoin moves up or down, then they have to lay those positions in the morning. It certainly won't reduce the volatility. So I think anyone that chooses to invest in our company needs to understand that this is what we believe in, and that it is a volatile share. But as I say to everyone that I speak to, i.e. my family, if you want performance, you've got to accept volatility.
I'll probably misquote this, but yesterday in your showcase, you said something along the lines of, "We're only just getting started," or along those lines. This is a second-hand conversation with a TradFi person that I was told about, where they said, look, if you're looking at a stock that's gone up 30 to 40x in 4 weeks since its IPO, you've probably missed the boat, or it's not going to go much further, and you should be considering selling, not adding more. Now, obviously, I know you wouldn't comment on someone's sort of financial advice, but what would you say to someone who is maybe sort of thinking along the lines of, yeah, it's done, like they've already made it, kind of thing?
Yeah, I think everyone needs to, when you invest in anything, you need to look at what you're investing in and understand the business. There's enough sort of examples of companies that have followed similar strategies globally. There's even a very good example of a company that one of our directors is a director of, Metaplanet. That's done something like 300x, I believe, over a 12-month period. So, I think my comment, of we're only just getting started is quite balanced, really, in terms of, is 40 a smaller number than 300? Of course it is, So I think people need to understand what we're doing. It's not my my job to sort of convince people that don't believe in what we're doing. That's people's own choices. If people have got questions, then of course, as hopefully everyone will know, I'm more than happy to answer them. I believe in what we're doing, and I believe in our business strategy, and if it sort of all ended here, so to speak, I think that would be a failure. we are only just getting started.
And then to sort of wrap up, Q4 last year was when this kind of got kicked off. I know there's more backstory to that, but that's kind of when wheels started turning. And then, the IPO launch, we've had a fantastic first month trading. Now you're in Vegas, and hopefully, I know you can't tell me, but hopefully you're doing deals. What do you think the rest of the year looks like from a sort of direction perspective for you and what you're going to do?
Well, I hope that what everyone will see is that we stick to our strategy. We keep executing well. I think we've executed well to date. I would like to say that we'll keep on accelerating, but the line's almost vertical now, so maybe it's just maintaining that pace.
Okay.
I think that would be good enough for most reasonable people. Yeah, let's just keep going and see how sort of quickly we can do everything with the appropriate responsibility. Yeah, I've got no idea like how big the company will be, in even 6 months. We've done well so far. As long as we can keep doing well, then, we'll just see where it goes, It's pretty exciting though.
Yeah, for sure. I don't think I've ever sort of witnessed almost firsthand, being in Vegas with you, work ethic like it. So, I'm very grateful that it's you at the helm and probably not me, to be honest.
You can hear in my voice, it's sort of, it's been a sort of a pretty full on few days, but, I love work. I work quite long days, whether it's here or anywhere else. And, I'm very lucky to have a job that I absolutely love. This is my perfect job. I was fortunate that I was able to design my own perfect job. Is it work? Yeah. Sort of sometimes my kids say the odd thing to me, and, I feel a bit bad about that, if I haven't got so much time, but, needs must, on with the mission. And, we go.
Fantastic. Well, thanks so much for taking the time out of the conference. We've got the shareholder meetup in a little bit, so
yeah.
I'm looking forward to that too.
Yeah, me too.
And if I don't see you after that, safe travels back to the UK.
Thank you.
Take care.